6 out of 7 plaintiffs have abruptly dropped their sexual abuse claims against Sean Diddy Combs' former assistant. What really happened, and what's still left standing? It's a twist that no one, not even seasoned courtroom watchers, saw coming. In a case already tangled with celebrity power, high-profile attorneys, and allegations that could shatter reputations forever, this sudden exodus of accusers feels almost cinematic. But behind the headlines, behind the social media frenzy, lies a much more complicated truth, one built on timelines, evidence, and strategic legal maneuvers that could make or break the last remaining claim. Let's rewind for a moment. Months ago, when this lawsuit first hit the public eye, it was billed as a multi-plaintiff assault case implicating not just Sean Diddy Combs, but the people around him, including Christina Coram, his former assistant. The accusations were severe. Multiple individuals stepped forward, their testimonies painting a disturbing picture of abuse, cover-ups, and a culture of silence. For a while, it seemed like the case had momentum, the kind that could drag every corner of Diddy's past into the courtroom spotlight. But now, in one swift legal turn, that momentum has shifted. 6 plaintiffs, Latasha Forbes, Billy Cummings, Ian Farron, Ahmad Jenkins, Lackey Applewhite, and one identified only as Jane Doe, have pulled their names from the complaint. One by one, they withdrew, leaving a single accuser still standing. The reason? According to court filings, the defense produced a timeline that, quite frankly, dismantled much of the case against Coram. Some of the alleged incidents took place before she was even employed by Diddy. Others? Allegedly before she was born. Yes, you heard that right, before she was even alive. For defense attorneys, this was a goldmine. A single page of employment history and official records became their wrecking ball, swinging directly into the heart of the plaintiff's credibility. Now, the spotlight narrows. Only Fallon Matthews, the sole remaining plaintiff, continues to press forward. Her claims stem from an alleged assault in Illinois in 2014. The defense has already filed motions to dismiss, citing jurisdiction issues, statute of limitations concerns, and what they call a failure to meet the legal threshold for a trafficking claim. But this isn't just about one woman's claim. No, this case has become a microcosm of something much larger, the way celebrity trials unfold in public view. The way narratives can be built up in headlines and dismantled in court filings. The way a single twist can shift the entire direction of a case, and leave the public asking whether justice is being served or sidestepped. And remember, while this lawsuit plays out in the civil courts, Diddy himself is already entangled in the criminal justice system. Found guilty on some charges. Not guilty on others. Awaiting sentencing. Every new development in this civil case is feeding into the larger true crime tapestry surrounding one of hip-hop's most controversial figures. So tonight, we're going to pull apart every thread. We'll trace the timeline from the first accusation to the moment 6 plaintiffs walked away. We'll look at the strategy, both legal and PR, that's been deployed on each side. And we'll explore what happens next, for Fallon Matthews, for Christina Coram, and for Sean Diddy Combs himself. Because in high-profile cases like this, the courtroom is only half the battlefield. The rest? It's fought in the court of public opinion, and that's where you get to decide where you stand. If you're new here, welcome to Criminal Echoes, the place where we don't just follow the headlines, we investigate the stories behind them. From unsolved mysteries to high-profile trials, from whispered rumors to courtroom bombshells, this is where we break it all down, fact by fact, detail by detail. My goal isn't to sensationalize these cases, you already get enough of that from mainstream media. Instead, we look at the evidence, we study the timelines, we fact-check every claim, and we bring the truth, or as close to it as the public can get, to the surface. In today's video, we're diving deep into a case that's been making waves for months, the lawsuits tied to Sean Diddy Combs and the stunning collapse of 6 out of 7 plaintiffs' claims against his former assistant. We'll go beyond the headlines to understand what really caused these plaintiffs to walk away, what legal moves made this possible, and what it all means for the sole remaining accuser, and for Diddy's already tangled legal battles. So if you want real analysis, if you want the receipts, if you want to follow every twist and turn in one of the most talked about celebrity cases of the year, stick around. Because by the end of this video you'll have the full picture, and maybe a different perspective than you. First, we'll step back to the very beginning, the initial filing of the lawsuit, the wave of plaintiffs who came forward, and the accusations that threatened to pull an entire empire into the spotlight. Then, we'll follow the timeline, every court hearing, every motion, and every strategic leak to the press, right up to the moment 6 plaintiffs walked away, and why their claims didn't survive the scrutiny. We'll examine the defense's playbook, from dismantling timelines to challenging legal definitions, and how these tactics are reshaping the battlefield in favor of Diddy's former assistant. You'll also meet the one plaintiff who's still standing, still fighting, Fallon Matthews, and learn why her case is different from the rest, and whether it stands a chance in court. And finally, we'll look at the bigger picture, what this means for celebrity justice, for high-profile legal defenses, and for the public's trust in the legal system itself. Because while this is one case, it's also a mirror, reflecting how power, money, and reputation collide when the stakes couldn't be higher, asterisk. To really understand the weight of this moment, we need to go back to where it all began, and to one name that might not be as well known as Sean "Diddy" Combs, but who now finds herself caught in the crossfire of his legal battles, Christina Coram. Coram wasn't just a random employee, she was Diddy's former assistant, working closely with him during a period when, according to multiple accusers, some of the most serious allegations took place. Her role, as described in the original lawsuit, was not that of a bystander. The plaintiffs claimed she actively participated in covering up incidents of sexual assault, trafficking, and abuse, a charge that, if proven, could have opened her up to massive civil liability. The lawsuit didn't come out of nowhere. It landed during a time when Diddy's name was already swirling in controversy, facing a federal trial on separate but equally explosive charges. The media storm was intense, and in that storm, Christina Coram's name got pulled into the tide. According to court documents, the initial case was built around 7 plaintiffs. They painted a disturbing narrative, one where Diddy was the central figure, but his team, including Coram, allegedly worked to shield him from consequences. Their claims ranged from direct abuse to facilitation and concealment, creating a web of accusations stretching across years, even decades. For months, it looked like the plaintiff's case was solid. The story was picked up by every major entertainment outlet and true crime blog. Social media was buzzing. In the court of public opinion, the idea of a celebrity's inner circle being held accountable was gaining traction. But here's the thing about high-profile lawsuits, the first version of the story is almost never the last. When Coram's legal team began dissecting the accusations, they zeroed in on one thing, the timeline. And that's where the cracks started to show. Records revealed that Coram didn't even begin working for Diddy until 2013. Yet some plaintiffs described incidents supposedly involving her in the late 1990s and early devastating accusation. That one claim was tied to a time before she had even graduated high school. Assistant wasn't just aware of misconduct happening behind the scenes before she was born. She actively worked to hide it. For any defense attorney, the plaintiffs claimed that Coram played a role in covering up a pattern of abuse, in the story, from arranging situations that allowed the alleged misconduct to happen, and in doing so, discouraging they set off a chain reaction that would cause 6 out of 7 plaintiffs to drop their claims entirely. The allegations were framed as part of a larger ecosystem, one where power, money, and influence created an environment where people in Diddy's orbit allegedly enabled his behavior. In the plaintiff's version of events, Coram was more than an employee, she was a gatekeeper, someone who stood between the outside world and the truth. Each plaintiff's story added to the picture, multiple incidents over years, different locations, and different methods, but a recurring theme of intimidation and silence. The claim wasn't just that Diddy committed abuse, it was that those around him made it possible for him to keep doing it, asterisk. To really understand why this civil lawsuit matters, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because Sean "Diddy" Combs isn't just dealing with one case. He's fighting a full-scale legal war on multiple fronts. In September 2024, federal agents arrested Diddy on a sweeping set of charges: sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation for the purpose of prostitution. What followed was a trial that had the nation's attention, weeks of witness testimony, courtroom drama, and relentless media coverage. When the verdict came down, it was a mixed blow. The jury found him guilty on 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. But on the more explosive charges, sex trafficking and racketeering, they returned a verdict of not guilty. Even with those acquittals, the guilty verdicts still carry serious consequences. Diddy is now awaiting sentencing, currently scheduled for October 3, 2025. That date hangs over every other case he's involved in, because the outcome could influence negotiations, settlements, and public perception. And this isn't just about the criminal case. On the civil side, Diddy's name is tied to multiple lawsuits, defamation claims, property disputes, and the high-profile case involving Christina Korum. Each one feeds into the other, creating a legal and PR storm where every win or loss shifts the balance of power. This is why the sudden collapse of 6 out of 7 plaintiffs in the Korum lawsuit isn't just a footnote. In the larger chess game Diddy is playing in courtrooms across the country, it's a significant move, one that could have ripple effects far beyond this single case, asterisk. Now we arrive at the twist that changed the entire trajectory of this case: the sudden and near-simultaneous withdrawal of 6 out of 7 plaintiffs. The names are on the court record: Latasha Forbes, Billy Cummings, Ian Farron, Ahmad Jenkins, Lackey Applewhite, and one listed only as Jane Doe. Each of these individuals came forward with allegations that, at first glance, seemed to weave together a pattern of abuse, secrecy, and enabling behavior by Diddy's former assistant, Christina Korum. Their claims spanned different years, locations, and circumstances, yet all pointed back to a common theme: that Korum, while in Diddy's orbit, had a hand in concealing what was happening. But once Korum's defense team began digging, a different picture started to emerge. The first crack appeared when attorneys examined the timeline. Korum's documented employment with Diddy began in 2013, yet some plaintiffs placed her at events in the late 1990s and early 2000s. In one instance, the alleged incident was said to have happened before Korum had even graduated high school. In another, before she was even born. Think about that for a moment. The defense didn't need dramatic counter-witnesses or secret video footage. They just needed a calendar and employment records. This wasn't just about credibility, it was about legal survival. In a civil case, if you can show that the accused could not possibly have been present during the alleged events, you don't just weaken the claim, you erase it. As these inconsistencies were laid out in court filings, one plaintiff after another began to withdraw. No press conference. No long public explanations. Just quiet exits from the case docket. From the outside, the withdrawals might look coordinated, but legally, each was an individual decision. Some may have been advised by attorneys that the evidence wouldn't hold up. Others may have faced the reality of mounting legal costs or the emotional toll of a high-profile fight. In civil law, if you know your case can't survive summary judgment, walking away can be a calculated move to avoid further damage. The end result? 6 of the original 7 plaintiffs are now gone. And the narrative that once looked like an overwhelming wall of accusations has been reduced to a single, solitary voice. But here's the important thing: the defense hasn't won yet. One plaintiff remains, and her claim is still active. Which means the case isn't over, but the battlefield has changed, asterisk. This revelation proved to be a pivotal turning point in the case. Court filings revealed that several of the most serious accusations against Christina Korum simply didn't align with the documented timeline of her employment. In fact, records show that Korum didn't begin working for Sean Diddy Combs until 2013, a full decade or more after some of the alleged misconduct supposedly took place. And here's where it becomes even more striking: a few of the alleged incidents reportedly occurred before Korum was even born. This created an unavoidable contradiction that defense attorneys seized upon immediately. In their arguments, they portrayed the claims not only as factually impossible, but also as an indication that the entire case might be riddled with inconsistencies. For the plaintiffs who eventually dropped their suits, this timeline problem was like a flashing red light. If such a critical detail could be so far off, it cast doubt on whether their own testimonies could hold up under cross-examination. Behind the scenes, legal analysts suggested that the mounting timeline discrepancies gave Quorum's legal team an opening to push for dismissal, and for some plaintiffs, it may have been enough reason to walk away entirely rather than risk an embarrassing defeat in court. From a legal standpoint, a faulty timeline is no small error, it's a potentially fatal blow to a case. In civil suits, credibility is currency. If a plaintiff's account contains events that couldn't possibly have happened during the accused period of employment, or, even more damning, before they were born, that narrative starts to unravel. Defense attorneys know this well. A single proven inaccuracy can be used to cast doubt over all of a plaintiff's claims. In Quorum's situation, the timeline didn't just fail to support the allegations, it actively contradicted them. This gave her legal team an undeniable advantage, the ability to argue that the case was built on unreliable testimony, and therefore lacked the foundation needed to move forward. And in the court of public opinion, the damage was just as significant. For a lawsuit that was already tied to one of the most high-profile and controversial figures in music, this crack in the foundation became a talking point. Legal experts on talk shows and in op-eds began questioning whether some of the cases tied to Diddy's orbit were more opportunistic than substantiated. In short, the wrongful timeline wasn't just a minor detail, it was a lifeline for the defense and a red flag for anyone watching the case closely. And for 6 out of the 7 plaintiffs, it may have been the moment they realized their chances of winning had just slipped away. That leaves us with just one person still standing, Fallon Matthews. Unlike the 6 who walked away, Matthews is holding her ground. Her allegations center on an incident that she says took place in Illinois in 2014, involving both Diddy and Christina Quorum. According to court documents, Matthews claims she was assaulted during a private gathering, an encounter she says was orchestrated under the guise of a professional meeting, but which turned into something far more disturbing. The alleged setting is crucial here. Illinois has its own statutes regarding assault and sexual misconduct, and legal analysts have pointed out that these laws may work differently compared to the jurisdictions where some of the other plaintiffs filed their claims. That means Matthews' case could still carry legal weight, even after others have been dismissed. But this isn't just a legal fight, it's an uphill battle against perception. With 6 co-plaintiffs gone, the optics are difficult. The defense can now paint Matthews as an outlier, possibly suggesting that if the other claims collapsed, hers must be equally questionable. On the other hand, Matthews' persistence can also be framed as strength, the sign of someone unwilling to be intimidated or bought out. Her next court appearance will be a defining moment. It will either solidify her place as the last credible witness in this branch of the Diddy saga, or it will mark the quiet end of yet another explosive claim in a case already full of twists and contradictions. Christina Quorum's defense has been sharp, calculated, and, so far, effective. From the start, her legal team moved to dismantle the allegations piece by piece. They filed motions to dismiss on several fronts. Jurisdiction challenges, arguing that some claims were filed in courts that had no legal authority over her, given that she neither lived in nor worked in those states at the time of the alleged incidents. Statute of limitations, highlighting that many of the accusations date back more than a decade, well past the legal window in which such claims can be pursued. Failure to meet federal trafficking thresholds, Quorum's team stressed that the evidence presented didn't rise to the strict legal definition of human trafficking under U.S. law, which requires proof of coercion, force, or fraud linked directly to the accused actions. This isn't just about poking holes in testimony, it's about building a narrative that Quorum was not only uninvolved, but legally incapable of being responsible for what's being claimed. And for now, that narrative is working. 6 plaintiffs gone, motions gaining traction, and a defense team that seems determined to sweep the board before this case even has the chance to go to trial. In short, it's a momentum shift. By removing 6 plaintiffs from the equation, Quorum's team has not only reduced the legal exposure, but also chipped away at the emotional weight of the case. A jury faced with multiple accusers can be swayed by sheer numbers. Now, with only one plaintiff left, the optics are drastically different. For the defense, this opens the door to a more concentrated counterattack. Instead of having to address a web of accusations spanning years and multiple locations, they can zero in on one set of allegations, in one location, from one person. It also gives them more courtroom bandwidth. Resources and legal energy that might have been split among many claims can now be laser-focused on dismantling Fallon Matthews' case. And there's a psychological element here too. Other witnesses or potential accusers may hesitate to come forward if they see plaintiffs withdrawing under pressure. In the public arena, fewer active claims can subtly create the impression that the case is weakening, an image the defense will absolutely want to amplify in media coverage and in court. In essence, Quorum's legal camp just traded a scattered battle for a more winnable fight, and they're likely already planning to press this advantage hard. While Christina Quorum's situation plays out in civil court, Sean "Diddy" Combs himself is standing in the middle of a far more explosive battlefield, one where the stakes aren't just financial, but involve his freedom. Let's rewind to the conclusion of his high-profile criminal trial. The verdict landed like a thunderclap in the entertainment and legal worlds alike. Guilty on 2 counts of transportation for prostitution, a serious federal offense carrying potentially significant prison time. Not guilty on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering. The split verdict was telling. On one hand, prosecutors failed to prove the most sensational allegations that dominated headlines for months, that Diddy orchestrated an organized network of sex trafficking. On the other, the jury clearly found enough credible evidence to convict him on transporting individuals for the purpose of prostitution, a charge that still carries heavy moral and legal weight. With sentencing set for October 3, 2025, both sides are preparing for the next round. Prosecutors are expected to push for a sentence that sends a public message about celebrity accountability, while Diddy's legal team will likely lean into the not guilty rulings as proof the government's big case fell apart. This verdict also has ripple effects beyond the criminal courtroom. Civil cases, like the one involving Quorum, often borrow from the credibility established, or damaged, in criminal trials. A partial conviction can embolden certain plaintiffs while discouraging others, and it shapes the narrative in the media, where public opinion can sometimes sting even more than a judge's ruling. While the headlines have focused on the sudden retreat of 6 plaintiffs, some of those exits reveal just how fragile certain claims can be once they're tested in court. Take the anonymous Jane Doe lawsuit, for example. On paper, it sounded like yet another blow to Diddy's public image, another accuser stepping forward with disturbing allegations. But in the legal arena, anonymity has limits. Judges can allow plaintiffs to withhold their real names from the public for safety or privacy reasons, but the court itself still needs identifying information to proceed. In this case, Jane Doe provided no such details. No verifiable identity. No concrete trail for the defense to investigate. Without that, the lawsuit simply couldn't move forward. It wasn't a matter of proving or disproving the allegations, it was a procedural dead end. And that's exactly how it was dismissed. From a legal standpoint, this kind of dismissal matters. It shows that in the post-#MeToo legal climate, courts are still balancing the right to privacy with the need for due process. You can't just accuse someone, especially in a high-profile case, without at least stepping into the shadows where the court can see who you are. For Diddy's defense team, these dropped cases are more than just numbers going down on a docket. They're opportunities to signal, both in court and in the press, that not all claims can withstand scrutiny. For the public, however, the disappearing lawsuits create a more complicated question: are these cases collapsing because they're weak, or because the pressure on plaintiffs is just too great to bear? Among the flurry of lawsuits orbiting Diddy, one stood out for its sheer star power, a high-profile civil case involving both Sean "Diddy" Combs and Sean "Jay-Z" Carter. When news first broke, the entertainment world braced for a clash between 2 hip-hop titans in the courtroom. The allegations, while not as widely publicized as Diddy's criminal charges, carried enough intrigue to capture headlines and stir speculation about what really happens behind the closed doors of the music industry's elite circles. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. Court records show the case was voluntarily dismissed with prejudice. For those unfamiliar with the legal term, that means the plaintiff can't file the same claim again. The dismissal didn't come with a public explanation. No lengthy statement from attorneys, no courtroom theatrics, no leaks to the press about secret settlements. Just a quiet but final exit. This kind of vanishing act raises eyebrows for both legal observers and fans. Was it a strategic retreat by the plaintiff, perhaps after reviewing the odds of winning against two powerhouse defense teams? Or was there an agreement reached behind the scenes, wrapped in confidentiality clauses so tight no one dares to speak? For Diddy, it was another chip off the mountain of legal trouble surrounding him. For Jay-Z, it was a reminder that even the most insulated figures in music aren't immune to being pulled into someone else's legal storm, if only briefly. In the swirl of names attached to these legal battles, one stood out for his aggressive courtroom style and history of high-profile wins: Tony Busby. Known for his media-savvy approach and fearless takedowns, Busby was a headline maker in his own right, the kind of attorney whose presence alone can make a defendant's legal team sweat. But in this case, he didn't stick around. According to court filings and reports from the Houston Chronicle and Business Insider, Busby withdrew from representing one of the plaintiffs due to licensing issues. Since Busby isn't licensed to practice in certain jurisdictions where this lawsuit was unfolding, his participation required special approval, a process that can be time-consuming and procedurally tricky. Coupled with what insiders described as strategic setbacks in the case, including shifting timelines, witness hesitations, and mounting defense motions, the decision was made for him to step aside. The result? His client lost one of the loudest and most battle-tested advocates on the roster. For the defense, Busby's departure was more than a procedural note, it was a morale boost. Losing a seasoned litigator with a knack for making headlines can subtly shift the energy of a case. For the plaintiffs, it meant regrouping, recalculating, and facing the uphill climb without one of their sharpest tools in the box. In the broader optics game, high-profile attorney withdrawals always raise questions. Was it purely logistical, or was it a sign the case's foundation wasn't as solid as it seemed? In high-profile, multi-defendant cases like this, credibility isn't just important, it's everything. When multiple plaintiffs step forward, the strength of their collective claims depends heavily on how solid each individual story is. Every inconsistency, every questionable timeline, every gap in evidence becomes a potential crack in the entire structure. The defense knows this, and they will pry at those cracks relentlessly. From a purely legal perspective, jurors and judges are human. If they sense even one plaintiff is exaggerating, misremembering, or fabricating details, doubt begins to spread like a stain. And in a multi-defendant case, that doubt doesn't always stay neatly contained to one person's testimony, it can spill over and weaken the perception of all the claims. Ethically, the stakes are even higher. When accusations involve sexual abuse, trafficking, or assault, the potential for lasting reputational damage is enormous, regardless of whether a verdict is ever reached. That's why plaintiffs' attorneys often invest so heavily in vetting their clients before filing, checking timelines, corroborating details, verifying that their story aligns with documented facts. But in this case, the credibility question became a recurring theme. 6 plaintiffs withdrawing their claims, some because the timeline placed quorum nowhere near the alleged incidents, didn't just narrow the lawsuit, it reshaped the narrative entirely. For the defense, this is a gift. They can now frame the case as a story of false accusations unraveling under scrutiny, rather than a large-scale pattern of abuse. For the remaining plaintiff, Fallon Matthews, it means fighting not just to prove her own story, but to distance it from the weaknesses of those who've already left the battlefield. From day one, the defense zeroed in on a simple but devastating line of attack: the timeline doesn't add up. They didn't need to disprove every word of the plaintiff's stories. They just needed to show enough inconsistencies to make the court question whether these events could have happened as described. And they had the receipts, literally. Employment records, payroll documents, travel logs, and even social media posts became their weapons. For Christina Korum, the defense presented proof she wasn't employed by Diddy until 2013. Several allegations against her dated back years before that, some even before she was born. That fact alone instantly erased large portions of the case against her. But they didn't stop there. By cross-referencing hotel records, event schedules, and witness statements, the defense began painting a different picture, one in which key defendants were in entirely different cities, sometimes even different countries, at the time of the alleged incidents. This tactic is brutally effective in multi-defendant cases. Once you dismantle a plaintiff's timeline, you don't just win points in court, you undermine their entire credibility. And because high-profile trials live and die in the court of public opinion, even a single proven impossibility can ripple outward, casting doubt on everything else. The brilliance of this strategy lies in its simplicity. Facts and dates don't have feelings. Jurors might sympathize with a story, but they can't ignore documented proof that contradicts it. In this case, the timeline became not just a detail, but the defense's strongest shield, and their sharpest sword. Why do plaintiffs walk away? When 6 out of 7 plaintiffs vanish from a case this big, it's natural to wonder, why now? Sometimes, the answer is straightforward: lack of evidence. As the defense picks apart details, plaintiffs and their attorneys may realize their claims won't hold up under cross-examination. Without solid proof, a courtroom battle can quickly turn into a public unraveling. Other times, it's about legal pressure. High-profile defendants have the resources to fight aggressively, file counterclaims, and keep cases tied up in motions for months, even years. For a plaintiff, that's not just exhausting, it's financially and emotionally draining. Then there's fear. Fear of reliving traumatic events in court. Fear of having personal details splashed across headlines. Fear of being targeted on social media, where public opinion can be merciless. In celebrity cases, the backlash can be intense, and it doesn't stop when the trial ends. Finally, there's the reputation factor. Once you step into the public arena, your life gets dissected. Old social media posts, past relationships, financial struggles, all of it can be dragged into the spotlight. Some plaintiffs decide the personal cost outweighs the potential legal victory. For anyone following true crime stories, this case is a masterclass in how fast a legal narrative can shift. 1 week, the headlines scream, 7 accusers. The next, 6 are gone. And the story you thought you were tracking? It's suddenly a different beast altogether. That's the challenge with high-profile cases, the facts evolve in real time. Witness lists change. Evidence is challenged. Attorneys come and go. And every new development has the power to reshape how the public views the accused, the accusers, and even the justice system itself. But here's the lesson: public opinion is fragile. It can swing wildly, not always because of the facts, but because of perception. A single dropped claim can make people believe the entire case is collapsing, even if one strong plaintiff still stands. Conversely, one explosive allegation can reignite outrage, even if it hasn't been proven in court. That's why, as true crime followers, we can't just chase the most sensational headline. We need to look deeper, to understand the legal nuances, the procedural twists, and the strategies playing out behind the scenes. Because the real story isn't just what happens in the courtroom, it's why it happens. And if this case proves anything, it's that justice, in the legal sense, isn't always as straightforward as it looks from the outside. So here's where we stand: 6 plaintiffs have walked away, their claims against Christina Korum now off the board. Only one accuser remains, Fallon Matthews, whose allegations from 2014 are now the central battleground. For the defense, this isn't just a relief, it's a strategic win, one that lets them channel every ounce of focus into dismantling a single case instead of 7. But let's not mistake a shift in momentum for the end of the war. The broader legal saga surrounding Diddy is still unfolding, from the lingering criminal sentencing set for October 3, 2025, to the ripple effects in other civil disputes. This is a living, breathing case, and what we know today could be upended by what happens tomorrow. If you've made it this far into the video, you already know, these stories are never as simple as they look in the headlines. So, if you want the real breakdowns, the behind-the-scenes legal strategies, and the context that makes sense of it all, subscribe, hit the bell, and stick with me. Because in this case, as in most true crime sagas, the ending is never written until the final gavel falls. Now, I want to hear from you. What's your take? Was this case once solid but weakened by poor evidence, or was it always a legal stretch from the start? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspective might even shape the next video. And speaking of the next video, stick around. We'll be digging deep into Diddy's upcoming sentencing and tracking the status of the remaining civil claims. Trust me, there's a lot more to this story, and the next chapter is coming fast. So, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and don't miss what comes next.